So smurfing is something in Valorant that is often met with a lot of frustration and disdain. Rightfully so, there's a rank distribution for a reason, right? To create the most balanced games possible among the entire player base. But the disturbance in this rank distribution is, as we mentioned before, smurfs. Smurfs playing in ranks that are lower than what they actually are can cause matches to feel a little bit weighted against you, and in some cases a lot weighted against you. But what many players might be surprised to hear is that depending on the rank that the player is smurfing in, it's not generally their aim that makes them so capable of carrying. Of course, in some cases, aim is a determining factor, but most of the time it's how they play encounters that really puts them above the pack. However, the thing that we experience as players is dying to them, and that's what in the end makes it feel like an aim difference. The thing is, smurfing is oftentimes met with an emotional response of, oh, there are smurfs on the enemy team, they're ruining our game, that sucks. Which, don't get me wrong, it does suck to go up against smurfs, but there is also a lot that you can learn from playing against smurfs if you really put your mind to it. Because at the end of the day, these players are human. They're not cheating, they're not pulling some magical tricks to beat you, they are literally just players who are better than you at the game. Which also means that you can learn from them if you give in to the opportunity. Today we're going to be focusing on just that. I'm going to go through some of the smurf commentaries from skillcap.com on the website and talk about what exactly it is that these players do that puts them in a position to win their games. Because like I said, generally the determining factor is not their aim, it's the decision making and positioning that ends up carrying the game for them. So let's look through a few of the games and talk about those things, and then we'll compare them to some of the VODs that we see from viewer submitted VOD reviews and see the differences that we find. So like I said, first we're going to be going over some of the games where we're going to have a Radiant player playing in a Plat Elo. And the very first clip I'm going to show you here isn't actually anything too crazy, but I just want to comment on his decision making throughout the end of the round. So notice as this clip starts, Jaden is going to be planting the bomb on default of B site Icebox, and you'll notice his Viper is currently searching for kills during a 3v1, and she's going to quickly end up turning this round into a 2v1. Because this Viper was searching for kills, this round has gone from pretty much an unlosable round to an easily losable round, and Jaden recognizes this. This is why you'll notice immediately when the Viper dies, Jaden is going to back up towards his jet and play the post plant together. There are a couple of rules per se for the game of Valorant, and pretty much one of the rules is that you almost always, if possible, want to be in a position to play off of your teammates and trade them out. There are times when this rule can be broken, but for the most part, if you don't know when it can be broken, I would just recommend playing with your teammates. The other thing I'd comment on here is that it isn't really the type of play that you'd be like, oh, okay, that guy's smurfing. The enemy Phoenix isn't going to come out of this round being like, aw, Smurf and Skye, we had no chance. This is a decision that goes completely unnoticed, but could easily have ended up winning them this round. Take a look at this viewer-submitted VOD review from Zan, where his teammates ended up throwing a pretty similar round. Now, this isn't actually Zan's play himself, but there is still a lot that we can learn from just looking over games in general, even if it's not our own plays that are being analyzed. I mean, obviously, if this video was only relevant to people in the video, it would have a terrible target audience. Anyway, let's talk about this round now. It's a 3v2 on split, and his team has the bomb down, and they actually had gun advantage in this round after winning the first round. This should theoretically be a good situation for them, except you'll notice there's something a little bit off with their positioning. The way this Raze is currently positioned, she's going to take first contact from screens, as well as technically a main, and there's not really anyone there who can even trade off of her. The only person who maybe could would be the Killjoy, but she's positioned at elbow, and it would be pretty awkward for her to swing out and trade any of these kills. So what does this mean then? Well, what it means is that Raze probably shouldn't play here. None of her teammates can help her, and she's all out on her own on rafters. She should probably back up towards site instead, or at the very least, drop down into hell, so at least that way she can isolate the screen's angle and swing off of Killjoy's contact when somebody pushes. What I would recommend is for Raze to play on site with her Skye so that they can play off of each other's contact when the enemy ends up pushing site, but there's actually another issue in this round that comes from his teammates. If you look at the map, the Raze isn't even the first person out of the three to die, it's actually Killjoy. How is this even possible, you ask, if Raze was the first contact like I said? Well, the Killjoy decided to push into screens and got herself killed from a 1v1 duel. So let's compare this to the other example from Jaden's game. In Jaden's game, he backed up and played the man advantage to secure the round. And in this game, two players positioned in such a way that they took 1v1s and lost the 3v2. And like I said with the previous clip, had the Raze decided to reposition and they won the round, nobody is going to be like, that was a high elo play. It's just a basic decision making thing that you can do in your games as well. Always make sure that you can play off of your teammates or that they can play off of you. Oh, by the way, just to further push this point that Smurfs don't normally win just because they have better aim, here are a few examples of Jaden whiffing in games on easy kills. Like, yeah, these players have good aim, but that by no means is the reason that they win their games. They win their games because they make good decisions. And being a higher ranked player doesn't automatically mean that you're never going to miss shots, especially when you're put into situations where it's easy to miss shots. Honestly, a lot of the work that I see Jaden do in his replays is mostly just grunt work. He's just walking around doing the things that his teammates should be doing, but they're not, so he does it. Take a look at this round right here. He starts out the round noticing that nobody on his team went A, so he immediately goes to make sure that if the enemy Sova recons, someone is there to shoot it. This is something that goes over a lot of players' heads, but Sova's recon gives a ton of information. And especially at these ranks, if a Sova recons A site and it gets 3 pings off without seeing anybody, they're just going to rotate to B immediately. However, if somebody shoots that recon, they don't know how many players are there, and they have to determine how many people should stay. And again, these are such small things that end up having a big impact. It's not like him shooting the Sova recon every single round shows up in his stats at the end of the game, but it actually does have a big impact on the team's offense, and it deserves to be pointed out. The next thing in this round that you'll notice, though, is that after he realizes that the Sova isn't going to recon this round, Jaden doubles back to mid to help with the mid pressure and watch the tube push. Because of this, he's able to pick up a kill on a lurking Sage, and had he just defaulted to B long where his team was going, the Sage would have easily ended up killing his Viper. But because he started out by trying to create pressure in mid to help his teammates, he basically just walks into a free kill, and as usual, you're not going to get called out for being a smurf for preparing to shoot a Sova arrow or creating pressure on the map and holding flanks. But these are the things that better players are doing that help them win more rounds. I think the big thing about that round from Jaden, though, is that he intentionally went to a different spot from his team because he wanted to create pressure in more than just one place. It's a weird concept to understand, but I'll try to explain it well in this round, submitted by Executioner161 from the Discord. So when you're playing on Split, there are actually only 3 locations that the defenders have to hold initially when the round starts out. They have to hold mid, they have to hold B, and they have to hold A. This is even less, by the way, if they have a Sage or a Cypher trip in any area. When you compare this to other maps, it's actually a bit different. On Haven, there are basically 5 lanes that the defenders have to hold. This is C long, garage, mid, A short, and A long. Obviously, this is going to result in the defense being a bit more spread out, and this is why Haven is oftentimes referred to as an attacker-sided map. Similarly, Split is often referred to as a defender-sided map. This probably won't come as a surprise to you. So how exactly can we make Split a bit easier to attack? Well, what you'll notice is although the map actually only has 3 lanes initially, being B, mid, and A, if you can force the defenders to back off of middle, what you'll notice is that the defenders now actually have 4 lanes to defend. This is now B, B heaven, vents, and A. Similarly, if you force them to back off of A main, say with a smoke, you can accomplish the same task of making it so they now have to worry about players pushing up A main, but they also have to worry about players pushing up ramp. So now while we're taking a look at this round from Executioner, you'll hopefully now see why what his team is doing right now is such a problem. Notice how in this round, 4 members of his team are going to just sit behind an Omen smoke for pretty much the first 40 seconds of the round in B main. As we discussed earlier, this doesn't actually make it easier for them to attack B. What's going to happen is that the heaven and mid players are going to rotate over to help, maybe even the A player if they stay there too long. And basically, not much is going to get accomplished. If they really want, they could have 3 players on B site, 1 just watching mid, and 1 watching for an A lurk. This is really bad. His team basically just has 4 players in B main doing nothing. And Executioner is incredibly good at making sure his team has smokes when they go in, but what he needs to do right now is recognize that a push is not going to happen anytime soon, and go towards mid to help his Jet create pressure somewhere else. And as per the example that we were going over earlier, by creating pressure in middle, it's actually going to make it a lot easier for his team to exit B main. Because if he and Jet are able to drop a few smokes in mid and create pressure for the mid players to back up, this will make it so rather than the defenders having 3 places to watch, B main, mid, and A main, they will now have to worry about players either going through vents or coming through B heaven. And this is going to cause them to have to split up their resources more, and that will make it easier for you to win the round. If this was all too complicated for you though, what I want you to take away from this is that you don't need to have 4 players on your team in the exact same location if you're not planning to hard push something. It's okay to take map control in the early game, and if you spot a spot on the map that your team isn't utilizing right away, it can be a good idea to use your utility to safely create some pressure there before moving to regroup with your team. This is what you'll see Jaden do in many of the rounds of his Smurf commentaries, and like I said, it's not a glamorous job, and in many cases it feels like grunt work, but it's important and it's necessary. With this all being said, it's also important to match the pace of your team as well though. So if your team is just all booking it onto site every single round, creating pressure elsewhere probably won't help too much. It's all about finding that good balance. Let's just take a look at one more round from Jaden though, and this time it's going to be a bit more of a frag heavy round, but there's an important thing to comment on that I don't see nearly as much in other games that I want to comment on here. You'll notice as the clip starts out, Jaden is going to be playing aggressively, looking for a duel, because his team is currently in a 4v5. If you can find a 1v1 early on and even out the numbers, it will give your team a better chance in the round, and this is something most players before Immortal don't even really think about. Mathematically, if you're behind in numbers, if you just play trades, you will end up losing the round, so you need to look for any 1v1s that you can find. You'll notice how Jaden does win the 1v1, but takes a little bit of damage, and it's going to cripple him for most of the rest of the round, but that's actually okay, because as long as you're playing off your teammates well, you can still be useful even when you're on low HP. With this in mind, this is why you'll see Jaden and his Sage take a 2v1 duel against the enemy Cypher immediately after behind the pillar. Immediately after this, they will both back up to reload, and then once the heal wears off, he starts to swing pillar again with his Sage, once again playing the numbers that they have. Because of this, he picks up 2 more kills, and then finally after dodging the Raze grenade in the round, he's going to catch her once again just after she finished fighting his Reyna. He aced the round, but the only fight that was a 1v1 really was the initial fight with the Reyna. Every other engagement after that was a 2v1 or more. And his aim was decent in this clip, but the big thing I want to point out here is it's not like he just landed 5 headshots and the round was over. Most of the kills that he took were more than 1 bullet, and had these been 1v1s, he easily loses this round. But they weren't 1v1s. He played off of his teammates, and that's the big takeaway here. Let's go back to Executioner's game though and talk about a very similar thing. So you'll notice in the second half of this round, after they all AFK'd in B main for the first half, they're going to rotate back towards A and try to get on site. Notice how right now though, they are down in numbers. And what do we say you should do if you're down in numbers? You should look for a pick to even out the odds. This is why it's actually a terrible idea for all 3 of his teammates to hunker down in the back of site, and to make it even worse, his Sage actually walled off elbow, so they had no room to maneuver around. On top of this, even once they went to site, Executioner watches the enemy team spam his Cypher through blue, and he doesn't swing off of this to help his teammate. Remember what our goals are? Look for picks and take 2v1s when possible. You want to use your teammates to your advantage, and if your Sage already walled off elbow, you both don't need to be watching A main. But even before this, the most important thing to point out is Executioner was the last one on site, meaning that if anybody was going to lurk and look for a pick to open up the round for his team, it was him. Rather than just running straight towards the site with his team, it probably would have been a better idea for him to go up ramps and look for a pick, or at the very least, late lurk A main and try to catch a pick there. But by funneling his entire team onto site, they effectively made this round practically unwinnable, and that's why doing these VOD reviews is so important, to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen in the future. I hope this video was helpful for you though, and if you guys wanted to submit your own VODs to be reviewed, be sure to head down into the link below and join the Discord. Also, if you wanted to catch the Smurf commentaries from Jaden where he walks you through the thought process and the reasoning behind all of his plays that you saw today, all of these games that you saw today are available in full on the website, so be sure to check that out at skillcapped.com. As always, my name's King, and we here at Skillcapped want to thank you all for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.